thank you everyone for coming tonight to listen to tonight's dialogue. We're really excited to have you here, and then we'll dig in from there. So, with the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and just kick us off since we are recording. This event will be recorded and available online afterward. And again, just a warm welcome, and just a quick housekeeping option here with the webinar information. You can join with your audio. You can choose micro speakers or your computer audio, or you can choose telephone audio and dial in. We do welcome you to submit questions through the Q&A function on Zoom. And we actually will be holding off for audience questions until toward the latter part of the dialogue tonight. But again, we do welcome those questions. And like I said, this webinar is being recorded. And so without further ado, I would love to introduce Grace, who can kick us off tonight. Grace is the Denver Climate Czar. And if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and kick us off tonight.
Okay, can you hear me all right? I have to move my phone away from myself. So I think there's going to be an echo. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us as we kick off the third Denver Solar Co-op. My name is Grace Rink. I am Denver's Chief Climate Officer and also the Director of our Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency, which we call CASR. You may hear that a few times tonight. I'm especially excited about this new co-op because I'm planning to join. I just moved to Denver in 2020. We've been in our house for just over a year. So now we have all the energy data that we need to make an informed decision about the size of a system that's right for our house. And like many of you, I'm sure I've had lots of vendors come to my door offering their services, but even I find that pressuring and intimidating. And I look forward to Sun doing the legwork of vetting contractors on my behalf. So back to explaining our office. CASR works to enable a sustainable, resilient, and climate safe future for all of Denver in collaboration with fellow departments, other units of government, and community partners. Denver is committed to enabling a rapid and equitable transition to a 100% renewable electric system in Colorado. And the Denver Solar Co-op is an important step in helping Denver meet these climate and equity goals. The co-op is a joint initiative by the City and County of Denver and the nonprofit Solar United Neighbors to help grow solar adoption in our community. The co-op is member-led, streamlined, and a group buying process to help residents go solar and save money. This year, we're also planning to offer solar equity rebates as part of the co-op program. Members who meet low to moderate income eligibility requirements will qualify for rebates to reduce the cost of their projects. $3,000 for solar and $2,000 for battery systems. A hardship fund will support unforeseen circumstances, such as necessary roof repairs, and the Denver Nonprofit Engagement, Office of Nonprofit Engagement, which is known as D1, will assist residents interested in additional bill savings by connecting them to nonprofits administering low or income qualified energy efficiency programs. So we're going to start tonight's event with a special keynote address, followed by a panel discussion featuring homeowners, nonprofit organizations, and government representatives who will discuss what going solar means to them. The discussion will center on personal experiences of going solar, the benefits of going solar, and the unique opportunities available through the Denver Solar Co-op. Now, our speaker this evening, our keynote speaker, is Councilman Jolon Clark. Born and raised in Denver, Mr. Clark was elected to Denver City Council to represent Lucky District 7 in 2015. During his tenure, the councilman has championed policies that focus on mobility and the environment. He was elected President Pro Tem of Council in 2016 and served as the President of City Council from 2018 to 2020. Mr. Clark serves on the board of, long list coming, Levitt Pavilion Denver, Denver Regional Council of Governments, the Mile High Flood District, Transportation Solutions, Visit Denver, the Energize Denver Task Force, and the Excel Energy Future Collaboration Group. So among other initiatives, he sponsored legislation to create our office and also to create the Climate Protection Fund, which is a permanent funding source to accelerate Denver's work to combat climate change. He's been a champion for the environment, and I'm pleased to welcome him as our speaker this evening. Councilman Clark, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Grace. As Grace just said, I am Jolon Clark, and I represent District 7 on the City Council. And I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining us tonight. I am so excited to be here for the launch of the third Denver Solar Co-op. Denver has always been a strong leader when it comes to addressing climate change, and I just wanted to run through a couple of recent highlights of that work. In 2018, Denver released its action plan for reducing greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050, including a goal for the city to be powered by 100% renewable electricity by 2030. In 2019, the City Council pushed for the creation of this new climate office to centralize staff who are working on climate issues all across the city and elevate that work in the city. Council also proposed at that time a new funding source to go to voters to fund this new office and this critical work. But after working with the mayor's office, Council held off on going to voters in 2019 to work with the administration to stand up the new office and to launch a task force to develop a plan for Denver to address climate change head on. In 2020, the Climate Action Task Force concluded and put out its recommendations and encouraged Denver to go even further, faster, by calling for a 100% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2040 and encouraging Denver to center equity and racial justice in its energy transition and climate work. This led to City Council referring Measure 2A in November of 2020 to create Denver's Climate Protection Fund, to fund the newly created Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency, and to meet these challenges head on and work to enable a sustainable, resilient, climate-safe future for all of Denver. The measure passed with flying colors, making Denver the first city in the country to pass a dedicated sales tax measure specifically to fund climate work. So we are on the cutting edge and leading in this country on this. The solar co-op plays an important part in reaching the city's climate goals and particularly aligns with two key points of Denver's climate vision. First, to make Denver a leader in clean and local energy that comes from the sun, wind, or other innovative renewable technologies. And second, to inspire community action and ensure environmental justice, equity, and affordability as Denver transitions to a carbon-free energy system. The solar co-op has made significant progress in these areas in a few really significant ways. The solar co-op has helped 62 families and businesses build 341 kilowatts of solar capacity by making rooftop solar more affordable through the 2019 and 2020 co-ops, and has established a solar equity rebate program that will extend accessibility of rooftop solar to our low and moderate income communities. The upfront cost of solar can be a major barrier for many families, and the solar equity rebates will provide $3,000 towards the cost of solar and $2,000 towards the cost of battery storage for income qualified co-op members. A hardship fund will also be available to support unforeseen circumstances such as necessary roof repairs or electrical upgrades that are run into as they are working towards solar. So despite these many benefits, we also recognize that rooftop solar still may not be an option for many people. So we're also providing information for how renters and others can subscribe to community solar gardens or access free energy efficiency upgrades through Denver's Office of Nonprofit Engagement to further save money on their electricity bills. The co-op also complements a suite of other programs and initiatives that CASR is working on, including advancing sustainability through our programs that we just launched this summer, like Bring Your Own Bag, which seeks to reduce the number of disposable carryout bags used, littered, and landfilled, while reducing the amount of plastic that we're using, working towards making all new and existing buildings and homes net zero emissions through buildings that are highly efficient, all electric, grid flexible, and powered by 100% renewable electricity. Enabling a rapid transition to 100% community-wide renewable electricity use by 2030 through increasing system renewables, distributed solar, and utility-scale renewable energy subscriptions, and by transforming transportation by prioritizing transit, biking, walking, and paving the way for electric vehicles. We still have a long way to go to meet our climate goals, but these programs and initiatives are making significant progress and are an important part of that transition. As we move forward, we have to act with urgency. The most recent IPCC report emphasized that through its sobering findings, which highlight that climate change is widespread, rapid, and intensifying. We have to take action now and do our part to ensure that we preserve our home, this amazing planet, for future generations. Including equity as a foundational component of this transition not only ensures that no one is left behind, but it also ensures that everyone has a voice in this process. So as we launch the 2021 Solar Co-op, we're taking a big step through the solar equity rebates to make sure that we see solar adoption expand to all neighborhoods across Denver. The 2021 Solar Co-op is making solar an accessible opportunity for all of our communities so that we are all able to take action to reduce our climate impacts. So again, thank you all so much for being here tonight and being a part of this important work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councilman Clark. We really are excited to have you kick off tonight's event and grace your presence as well, because this is just a really exciting time to ramp up our impact and making a difference in the community. And speaking about the community, we are very excited to have a bunch of folks on tonight. So feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself, let us know which neighborhood you're in from. And we also have a couple of audience questions we want to kick off just so we know who you are and what your interest is with solar. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And to kick us off with our first question is, what is your current level of understanding regarding rooftop solar? And we'll wait just a couple minutes here or seconds to get your answers. Okay, great. So it looks like a lot of you have done some research already, as well as have some basic understandings, but certainly we're excited to have you here and we'll be talking more about solar. And then there's also opportunities to learn more. So thank you for that. And the next question is, what interests you most about rooftop solar? And the options that we have are climate environmental benefits, cost savings on my energy bills, building resiliency, or other. And based on the responses so far, about over 60% of you have said climate environmental benefits. About a fourth of you said cost savings. One of you said building resiliency. And yeah, feel free to type in the chat the other ideas. So thank you. And our last question for the segment is, what do you see as the biggest obstacle to rooftop solar? Great. It looks like about 70% of you have said the initial investment cost, which we totally understand. Next up, about 18% of you said navigating the process. And then one of you said easy access to information and roof space. So again, those are definitely also challenges in considering it. So thank you all for sharing those. So I want to talk just for a moment to explain a little bit about who we are. You heard from Grace and Jolon a little bit of our background, but Solar United Neighbors is a vendor neutral nonprofit organization. And we were started about in 2007 in Washington, DC, where the two young gentlemen in the top right, Walter and Diego, were inspired to take climate action. And as part of the inspiration, Walter realized the best thing they could do is lobby his mom to go solar. And being a little overwhelmed, she said, okay, let's talk to our neighbors and see how we can potentially go solar together. And pretty soon the two boys were knocking on doors all throughout the neighborhood, and they had 50 of the neighbors come together and investigate, learn, and ultimately decide on a installer to move forward. And that was essentially the first solar co-op or group buy process that happened with Solar United Neighbors. By 2011, we founded as a nonprofit organization, and we've become one of the leading educational and outreach organizations for solar in the country. To date, we've led 300 solar co-ops and helped over 6,200 installations, amounting in over $132 million of investment. And we project that this will save consumers $216 million over the lifetime of their projects. All the while, we've been building a community of over 150,000 people across the country that are committed to helping build a clean, equitable energy system with rooftop solar at the cornerstone. And so that is our core mission. Let me go back. Again, we're a community of people building a new energy system with rooftop solar at the cornerstone. So our main focuses are to help people go solar, join together, and fight for energy rights. I also want to highlight a visual, because I love visuals, of the impact we've had in Denver. And you can see here that we've engaged over 1,000 people all across Denver. We worked with dozens of different partners, registered neighborhood organizations, and other nonprofits and businesses to help get the word out. We have been able to make an impact where we've supported about $1.5 million in energy we will see $1.5 million of energy savings over the next 25 years of those that have gone solar so far across those 62 projects. So we're really excited to be able to make that difference and calculate that is actually offsetting real carbon emissions and offsetting the equivalent of 1,600 passenger vehicles off the road for a year. But as you look at this map, there are some trends. The blues are those that were members that signed up, and yellows are those that were able to move forward with installation. And we are well aware that there are gaps, and that's where we're excited about the Denver Solar Equity Rebate Pilot Program, being able to address those gaps and make sure that the opportunities for solar are equitable across the city. And so as you heard a couple times now, we are prioritizing for qualifying households that is less than 80% of area median income can receive $3,000 rebate on the cost of solar and $2,000 rebate for battery storage, as well as there will be a hardship fund available. And our priority is to expand solar equity reach in communities we haven't had a lot of engagement in. And certainly many of you on this call tonight, we ask for your help in that because we want to make sure the word gets out and we continue to foster relationships with partners and leaders throughout our communities to be able to make an impact. And so that's a little bit about Solar United Neighbors. And tonight, though, we really want to highlight some different voices that are part of the community that have been working with energy equity. We will be letting everyone introduce themselves, but we will include Stacey Decker, who is serving both on the Denver Steering Committee and the Solar United Neighbors Advisory Board, and she was a 2019 Denver Solar Co-op member. We also have Chelsea Gaines with Grid Alternatives. She's their outreach coordinator. We have Mike Mazzola, who is the development director of Energy Resource Center. And we have Jonathan or Jonny Rogers, who is the renewable energy specialist with the CASR office. So to start things off, I would love for each of you just to introduce yourselves for a couple minutes, and then we'll get into some questions for tonight's dialogue. So Stacey, why don't you kick us off?
Sure thing. Hi there, everyone. My name is Stacey Decker. I've lived here in Denver since 2015, and I was a member of the first Denver Co-op in 2019. I'm actually an educator and an environmental scientist by training, and I've got 2 young kids. And our solar journey began when my then 8-year-old came home from school one day and said, "Mom, what are we doing to reduce our carbon footprint?" I realized then that we needed to do better and be better role models and do more to align with how we lived in our home with our values. So we were kicked into gear and we started researching the impact for our family of getting an electric car or going solar and what might make the biggest difference for us. At that time, the cost of going solar actually led us to get an electric car first. And then by chance, a few months later, I read a news article about the Sun Co-op, and I signed up to get more information. And I'm really glad I did, because it turned out that between the savings power of the co-op's group purchasing model, in addition to the tax incentives, that it made going solar made a lot more financial sense for us. So I became a member of the selection committee, which is a small group of co-op members who analyze the huge amount of data collected by Sun from each potential installer. And then we looked at that with the top priorities of the co-op members and used all that information to choose the provider for our co-op. One of my favorite things about using the co-op, other than the financial savings, of course, was that Bryce and the Sun team provided vendor-neutral advice about member solar systems and the product options. There's a lot out there, and it's new technology, and it's changing all the time, and it felt really good to have people to ask, like, well, what do you recommend? Should I do microinverters? Should I not? What are the differences? And they just did a great job of explaining the technology to the members. And that made our choices a lot easier, and it was, a great perk of being part of the co-op. It also seems like Any home improvement project you do sometimes comes with its hiccups. And the other great thing about Sun is that they were there to handle those on behalf of their members until every system was installed and turned on. So that was just another great service that they provided in order to make the process as smooth as possible. So going solar has been one of my favorite home improvement projects that we've done, and there have been many, but it's been virtually maintenance free. It saves money and it feels really good to not have an electric bill each month. And several of our neighbors have noticed our solar panels, and it's actually inspired them to go solar as well. So it feels like it can increase the impact, throughout the neighborhood and the city. So I've been really excited to be a volunteer for Sun since then, and I'm happy as we get through here to answer any questions you all may have. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Stacey. And I would love to transfer over to Chelsea.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chelsea Gaines. I work for an awesome nonprofit called Grid Alternatives. And a little bit about what I do on a daily basis is, a little bit about my company, first of all, that I work for is we provide free solar installation to low to moderate income families based on the Department of Housing and Urban Development's AMI guidelines. So a lot of my work, I like to think of myself as a community organizer. I work closely with clients to first educate them on solar and what it looks like for them. And also, since we are a nonprofit, we're not a for-profit entity, to see if solar is a good option for them. But also in conjunction with that, just partnering with a lot of other nonprofit agencies agencies and government entities as well to get more to discuss solar and also work with legislation on solar being in the benefit of clients. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Okay.
Yep, that's it.
Great. Thank you, Chelsea. Great. I would like to now turn it over to Mike with Energy Resource Center.
Hi, I'm Mike Mazzola with Energy Resource Center. We're a nonprofit. We provide free energy efficiency upgrades to low-income families. 27 counties across 4 offices across the state. And we've been doing this for 40 years.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. And then Jonny, why don't you wrap us up with introductions?
Thanks, Bryce, and thanks everyone for being here. I'm Jonathan Rogers, but you can all call me Jonny. I'm the renewable energy specialist for Denver in our Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. And it's effectively my job to figure out how we transition the entire community to 100% renewable electricity as quickly and equitably as possible. That is a lot of coordination with our monopoly utility, Xcel Energy, and advocacy at the Public Utilities Commission, who are really the only people in the state who can tell Xcel what to do. So while we're working on really decarbonizing the system through our advocacy at the Public Utilities Commission and encouraging early retirements of coal plants and a more rapid transition to cleaner forms of electricity, that's also where various programs are established that give people the opportunity to do rooftop solar and battery storage in their homes or buy into clean energy programs to begin with. So based on what we're able to accomplish through that work, we can then create various programs to try to help promote that access and really get more people to connected to solar either on their roof or in their community, and also try to drive those investments at our municipal facilities as well. I'm also very fortunate to be a solar co-op member, having been a part of the 2020 co-op and ended up having my solar system installed in early April of this past year. And I actually did some math before the call and have saved $356 compared to the same 6 months last year since having my solar system installed. And every day walking home from work or taking the dog out for a walk and seeing those panels on the roof, it's a really great reminder of the actions that we all can take to help make a difference in decarbonizing the grid, and also feels good to save a little bit of money every month along the way. I'm really excited about this year's co-op and the launch of our solar equity rebate program, which will hopefully just be the first step in really creating broader access to rooftop solar and battery storage for more members of the community. And hopefully we'll continue to complement other programs that we have and other partnerships that we'll be forming to continue to try to move us in the right direction.
Great, thank you, Jonny. So as we begin our conversation tonight, I really wanted to start with this question because I feel like it's so integral to the dialogue about, as we look at the energy transition that's happening and the different roles that we're seeing within our communities. The crux of it is, what does the connection between energy and equity mean to you or your own organization? And I feel like this question is really important because it comes down to what is this all going to look like as we talk about these talking points. So I would love whoever would like to start first to kick us off if you want to dig into this question.
I can go first and offer the city perspective. Equity is really important in everything that our office does. We recognize how critical it is to reduce our carbon emissions as quickly as possible, but we also need to make sure that we're doing that in a way that really, brings everyone in the community along and creates better, positive, life outcomes for them. We really want people to be able to thrive for generations to come. So when I think about sustainability, it's really, not just environmentally sustainable, but also economically and socially sustainable as well. And so by ensuring that we have broader access to clean energy systems, that makes sure that we can provide those environmental benefits of helping to, decarbonize their homes. It means that we can provide better economic benefits by helping to provide savings on utility bills. And, socially making sure that we are creating job opportunities and we're investing locally and we're giving people, the chance to really connect with their communities and empower themselves with these systems. So it's all connected, and I think this is a great way to help push those goals forward.
Thanks, Jonny. Then, Mike, why don't you take us away with ERC?
If you don't mind, I'm going to turn my camera off. My screen's freezing a little bit. I don't want to lose you. We do this work. We insulate homes. We put in new furnaces for low-income families, and we collectively save them $300,000 a year on about 900 homes a year. And over the life of Can you hear me, guys?
Yep, we can hear you. Went out for just a second there. In the life of was where you left off.
Sorry, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. For the life of the measures of 20 years, that equates to that $300,000 equates to $6 million in utility savings. And so going into low-income neighborhoods, a lot of our employees come from the neighborhoods that we work in. So we have 100 employees, 80 of them service technicians, and they're doing the work in their own neighborhoods every day, which is really rewarding for all of us.
Thank you, Mike. Go ahead, Chelsea.
Yeah, so I think that's the easy question for working with the organization like Grid Alternatives. Grid started in 2001, and equity and energy was at the core of that. They saw co-founders Erica Mackey and Tim Sears. They both saw that our country and the world is moving forward in renewable energy, and that historically certain people have been left out of those conversations, whether it's due to access or resources. So they created Grid Alternatives to say, all right, renewable energy is going to happen. We want to make it an accessible thing for low to moderate income households and people of color, because those are the groups of people that are typically left out of conversations historically. So when we at Grid, when we move with any type of funding that we receive, anything, equity is always at the forefront of that. because that's why we exist. So I think the relationship between equity and energy is a huge one, because even if we, look at the redlining districts, right, you can see environmental injustice from where refineries are placed historically as well. And they typically impact low to moderate income families and Black and Brown communities as well. So I think we at GRID are aware of that. And when we created, or when this nonprofit was created, that was the forefront, is how can we bridge the gap? And more importantly, how can we empower these communities and teach them about renewable energy, and also train them in the trade of solar to empower themselves and go back to their communities as well as advocates. So yeah, everything that we do at GRID is intertwined with equity.
Thank you, Chelsea.
I don't have a whole lot to add on top of what those three said. I think is all really important. But just realizing as a homeowner, the cost of solar has decreased substantially over the past 10 years. It's gone down by 90%, but it's still a big initial investment. And I think that if we're able to make that initial investment more accessible to more families, the long-term benefits, far outweigh that initial investment in helping people be able to make this change. And the benefits are compounded financially for families through their continued savings. And it also helps us, reach our decarbonization goals. These systems are really long lasting. So this investment is something that, the upfront cost is there, but it will last, these systems last for decades.
Thank you, Stacey. And I would love to broaden up on what you just said there in terms of those benefits. And so for my second question for all the panelists, I would love to dig in more to what are those benefits in taking advantage of these programs that are available to Denver residents, whether it's solar co-op or if you're looking at energy equity programs. And especially as the organizations on this call, I would love to hear, what type of stories are we hearing from families that have been able to receive these benefits? And so maybe Chelsea, could we start with you? Because I know you were talking about GRID and how so much of it is intertwined, but what does that mean for your customers and families?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing outside of, decarbonizing the grid, right? Which is, I think for me is always like decarbonizing the grid. But the reality of it is that there also are other benefits, which is savings. So we at GRID, when we work with our clients, we can guarantee them that they will save anywhere from 50 to 80% in their utility bills annually. So I think that's always the biggest draw in, is like, what? Sign me up, But I think just as in terms of who we're helping and how that's actually translated, which is my favorite part, again, as being an outreach coordinator and working with clients closely and directly, is we were able to help one family who was a family of 11, and that's including them, their children, and the parents that they were taking care of as well. So they had a lot of young children, and I think any parents on these panels can attest to kids turning on lights and leaving them on and just consuming a lot of energy. So it's always great to be able to partner with them in solar, but also to partner with them and let them know of other resources like Energy Resource Center or Energy Outreach Colorado to weatherize their home, because weatherization and solar it's a beautiful symbiotic relationship, and the homeowners can save more with energy efficiency, and also learning that just because you're moving to a cleaner energy source, which is solar, and moving from the grid doesn't mean that you're not consuming the same energy. You are. So decreasing energy consumption is a huge part with energy efficiency and giving people those tools. So yeah, we've helped veterans. We've helped, again, that family of 11. We've helped one recent family that we helped is just these beautiful people who travel the world and just do nonprofit stuff all their lives. And unfortunately, they had to come back home because his wife got MS. And again, they're living off retirement as well. So it was great to be able to help them to, one, stay in their home, because that, I think, with the communities that we're working with, the help that grid provides is keeping people in their homes and stabilizing people in their homes. So I think these are just a couple of stories of what available programs that are out there for people and how it's keeping Denverites in their homes, and also helping to decarbonize the grid at the same time. So it's a win-win.
That's awesome. And it's beautiful to think of that family of 11 getting that support. And, I think as we look at what we're trying to accomplish with the Denver Solar Co-op, we know how important it is not just to look at solar, but as you were saying, Chelsea, look holistically of all the other benefits of weatherization and what these programs can provide. And that's where we're excited to be able to refer people to D1, which is the Denver Office of Nonprofit Engagement. And so the Energy Resource Center is one of those members. And so as folks participate through this rebate pilot, we want to make sure that they have access to those types of resources. And so, Mike, I wanted to expand that question to you, is just to get your sense of, as you look at weatherization, what does that mean as you offer those services to those families?
Oh man, like I said, we've been around for 40 years. We've been doing weatherization for 30 years. As we've grown, we touch about 2,000 homes a year, 900 homes a year through the specific weatherization assistance program with the state. So we're working on a lot of homes all across the state, Denver specifically in our Denver office. And it's every day, all day, helping people, keeping them safe and healthy in their homes, save money on their utility bills, decarbonize the grid. It's really beautiful every day.
Yeah, and this is a partnership that I'm particularly excited about. It means that we have more opportunities for folks that join our co-op, and might turn out that there's an additional level of services that they could really benefit from. We can make that connection, as well as we can work directly with the Energy Resource Center and the other partners of Denver's Office of Nonprofit Engagement to identify homes that might be good candidates for our solar rebate program, and making sure that we're getting out there and we're helping to provide this additional value that they might not be able to come across. So I think it's a really complementary partnership and relationship. When I think about some of the other benefits that we're trying to enable, when we look at the future of the grid and buildings, we really need to be doing something about our natural gas use as well. In Denver, over 90% of our natural gas use comes from space and water heating in buildings, and we really need to put that onto cleaner forms of energy, and specifically electricity is how we think that we're going to get there for the most part. So, your solar system offset your electricity bill. So if more folks switch over from gas to electricity for their heating needs and, for space and water heating, they can offset those costs as well. So now you're not just offsetting electricity, but what was your gas bill. So you're offsetting your entire, your utility bill potentially with this switch. And these technologies are getting better and better. They're much more energy efficient than natural gas. You avoid the combustion of fossil fuels in your home, which can lead to some indoor air quality issues. And I think we're just going to keep trying to push people in that direction, offset more of your bill, offset more of your carbon, and connect people to these complementary programs and resources at the same time.
Thanks, Jonny. And Stacey, going back to you to wrap up the question, I guess, as we think about these benefits, what have the benefits been for you participating through the co-op and for your family, and what's that been like?
Sure. Like I said, it's really been one of my favorite home improvement projects. As Jonathan was saying, it does feel really good to pull out of your driveway and see those panels, doing their work, and, the savings that you have each month and not having an electric bill. And I think that one of my other favorite parts of being a part of the co-op has been, the organizing that it does through neighborhoods and neighbors, finding people, getting people together. And I do think that there's a real power in that. We know that, this is going to take a huge movement and investment and people to be making this change. And, I think the sun, the community aspect of sun is also really important, to be finding other people who are making these changes, and getting together and using our power to organize together and be able to do it as, with saving as much money as we can along the way.
And being the super cool superhero mom that gets to go solar when your kid asks. So great. Thank you all. I'm glad to transition to questions from the audience, but also encourage everyone to have a dialogue and ask each other questions. I did want to cover, Meredith, I see you asked a couple questions just regarding some background of just the financing and stuff like that. We will be covering a lot of those questions in our information session on Thursday. We do see a lot of folks do finance their solar systems because there are some really competitive rates. There are programs like Renew with the Colorado Energy Office that do offer competitive rates to support people looking at that. And ultimately, it's a question, if you join a solar co-op, we're happy to work with you to figure out what might be best for you. We do find that also when you do install solar, there is a value that is added to your home. How much that is kind of depends on the market, but there is equity that can be contributed to your house. So we're excited to make sure that the market is informed, because it's similar to an Energy Star appliance. When your home or appliance is acting more efficiently and saving you money, there is a value to that. And so with that, I know there's a couple of questions that I wanted to offer for the panelists. Do you have any questions for each other at this point?
I'm curious to hear from Stacey, as you're going out and talking to your neighbors and things like that. What are the big questions that you hear from people who are either on the fence or maybe never even thought about going solar before talking to you?
Yeah, I think that the number one question is usually financial. I think people have in their head that solar for a long time was prohibitively expensive, and I'm not sure the word is totally out yet about how much costs have come down, and about programs like this and like the city of Denver are offering to help people make it more affordable. So I think that people, once they realize that it's a lot more accessible, are really interested in doing it. But that, I think, seems to be the biggest question right off the bat. So people assume that it's too expensive.
Someone just asked in the chat about WAP funding for solar, the Weatherization Assistance Program, which is what we do. The state has started limited funding for that, and it's free solar, and it's limited. If we do 900 homes a year for traditional weatherization services, I think maybe, and don't hold me to this number, we have 4 offices and it's kind of a moving target, but I think in our Colorado Springs office where I'm headquartered, I think we'll do about 20 this year. My guess is it might be 60 total or something. So of the 900 homes, there are maybe around 60 or so that will receive free solar, and it's still kind of a pilot program with the state, but it is free solar in addition to the traditional weatherization services.
And on that topic, I wanted to follow up, because I know in programs both in Colorado and elsewhere, trust becomes a fundamental factor in these relationships. And I've heard there are programs where they go door to door, say, hey, we are here to offer you free solar, and people just don't trust that. And I'm curious, especially for you as well as Chelsea, like what are your thoughts in terms of what it takes to build trust in the community to make sure that these programs are received and are proven effective?
We actually struggle getting clients for our services. Even the traditional weatherization services, we do social media advertising. And so if we do a social media ad on Facebook and it says, free furnace and free insulation on your home, people scroll right past those ads. They don't believe it. And you can understand why they don't, because we see that all the time. Free solar, no money out of pocket roof or whatever. So the messaging can be a little bit of a struggle, and I think the partnerships like this really help. So when Grid and ERC are together, or we have the Colorado Energy Office or Colorado Springs Utilities or Larimer County or the D1 contract, when we get our name attached to them, it creates the trust.
Yeah, and to echo that, I think just like anyone, right? Just we've been taught all of our lives, if someone says anything's free, run for the hills, right? Like it's a trick, it's a scam, right? And I think just when we come up across this unique thing with solar is that people do go door to door and say, hey, we will provide you free solar installation. And what that ultimately means as things get, hashed out down the pipeline is that either that means you get a free consultation, which is like looking at your roof, or you have your first 12 months free and then you get charged something. So again, and with Grid, again, the systems, we secure funding so that the systems are 100% free for folks. So I think the biggest part in building trust is always partnering with government entities like Denver to be like, hey, this is a real program and here's a logo on it, or even like here's a letter from, your legislator of whatever that looks like, saying like promoting the program, saying like, hey, this is something that is available to you, like if you qualify, apply. But also then on terms of the nonprofit is super, which is why I love calling myself a community organizer, is super imperative for us to get in with communities and make sure that they know about us, right? And build the trust of like what we're doing with the communities, right? But also instead of just saying, these are the things that we have to offer you, saying, what is it that your community needs? And workshopping with communities with our programs instead of just saying, this is what you need, we know best. Coming in and partnering with them and saying, what is it that you need? And a lot of times it's workforce development or savings. So I think, yeah, the biggest part is partnering with other local governments and municipalities so that, when we say that it's free, we can say, actually, go check out the website, like go check out your county's website. We actually have a page on there. You can see that we're legit. So things like that always help as well.
Yeah, Chelsea, I love that you brought up, understanding what does the community or that household really need. And that's why I think, our partnerships that we're bringing to this co-op are so important, because hopefully we'll be able to meet more of those needs and connect people to other services or other opportunities that are really going to be important in their lives. And then just having those conversations generally helps us understand at the city, what other programs do we need to be creating? What do we need to be thinking about in terms of our policies and approach to clean energy more broadly, or the built environment, or transportation infrastructure? And I think approaching everything with a recognition of climate change is an existential threat that we're facing as society, but as an individual, that household, they might be struggling to pay the rent that month. They might be struggling to put food on the table for their family. So the existential threats that they face are much more immediate. And so we need to make sure that we're solving, their real immediate problems, but doing so in ways that also have a climate benefit and help to address that bigger existential threat that we're all facing. So hopefully, all these programs, these partnerships can come together and really get people the help that they need and help us continue to improve, as a city government, and figure out how we can do better.
I think a unified front with all of us is really helpful when we do work together. We all have those statistics internally where we see that, Denver is consistently one of the most air polluted cities in the country. There was a day in March this year where it was the most air polluted city in the country and the 7th most air polluted city in the world. And that was prior to the wildfires. And it's not trying to scare people or being an alarmist or anything, but when we all work together and work as a united front to educate everyone how we can help the air quality issues and help families in need at the same time, it's really a beautiful message, and it kind of sells itself once we work together.
And with that note, I wanted to, based on a few questions we've been getting, talk a little bit about the solar co-op, because in the context, as you've heard tonight, we have the need to accelerate solar adoption. And so the solar co-op does a couple different things. Because it is a group buy process, we do see economic savings, economies of scale play into that. They can vary, and it comes down to ultimately our members are formed a selection committee with the solar co-op. So they are the ones that review all the information and then decide on one installer to serve the group. So generally based on that decision-making process and the installer, we do see savings anywhere from 10, 20%, possibly more. And it's just a really good way to also educate people and make sure that they're aware of what going solar means for them, whether it makes sense economically, or at least they have that in their back pocket for a future year, because our main focus is we just want to make sure folks are informed of what their options are. And so by not only helping with the personal benefits, it is the systemic benefits as we look at our air pollution and moving away toward a just energy future, renewable energy future. And I did see the question earlier from Melissa, does this include opportunities for profit independent schools and businesses? And yes, so for the solar co-op, anybody can join that is whether you're a resident or a business within the city and county of Denver. And then in terms of the rebate, though, that is focused for residents right now. So I think that covers a couple of those questions. And I think while I'll also add with Rosa, I see you're asking about multifamily housing. So there are several different opportunities for multi-unit properties to be able to take advantage of solar. First, there are community solar options, so you can actually register and get credit for an off-site solar system. Depending how your building is wired, you are able to also offset shared electricity cost, or if you have 1 meter, it could you could work on that 1 meter to share the savings. And there is policy that's been recently passed that's going to support commercial buildings at multiple sites being able to use solar and get credit on a different site for that. And the Public Utilities Commission is going to be looking at essentially virtual net metering and how to move forward with that policy. But unfortunately, that's probably at least a year, maybe 2 away before we see something like that implemented. But we're always willing to work with every community to find out what options you have and be able to make sure that these opportunities are presented, whether it's going solar or looking at weatherization programs and others. I'll pause there as I'm going through all the other questions, but anything else to add so far of this conversation?
Yes, I would say yes. Grid, again, a lot of my job is data crunching, looking at the statistics, and I think like 65% of Denver owns their home, which is huge. I think that's actually good news. But in terms of low to moderate income, it drops substantially to like 30%. So with that being said, there's a huge gap for people, again, who don't own their homes but live in multifamily units. So Grid does do solar garden subscriptions. Again, acquiring land to do solar garden subscriptions is a tough fret. But as we're currently in-house coming up with some creative ways of creating solar garden opportunities so that we can reach multifamily units in large apartment buildings and complexes as well, or even just homes who have roofs that are just too small for solar installation. So definitely keep an eye out for that. So yeah.
Yeah, and seeing Amber's question about, understanding that the co-op can act as an expert resource, even if you don't meet AMI qualifications, absolutely yes. And as a member of the co-op, you'll benefit from the group discount price. You won't qualify for the rebate, but you'll still help to get that group purchase price from the installer. And, we're working with Bryce and the folks over at Solar United Neighbors to help you understand all of your options, not just rooftop solar, but also community solar and these, various opportunities to figure out, what's the right way to go solar for you.
And I will share, we try not to share publicly what the exact dollar per watt price is for our selected installers because of the proprietary process. But again, the selection committee reviews that information. But what I will share is that generally market price solar in this area of Colorado is about $3 a watt. And the prices are starting to go up a little bit because of the ongoing trade fun in the world right now, but we tend to see it come in below that amount. But again, as a good base market price, we see about $3 a watt. So if you're looking at, say, a 5 kilowatt system, 5,000 watts, that would be a $15,000 system. And as I'm talking about the economics, the other factor is if you pay your taxes, if you're a tax entity, you would qualify for a 26% rebate on your taxes for your next tax return. So if you file that, so say a $10,000 system, you would get $2,600 credit back on your taxes. And with that, I want to transition a little bit to talk about policy, because one of the things that's working on the federal level is, could that tax rebate become a cash rebate to make it easier and more accessible to people to take advantage of that incentive? And Jonny, I see that David Villas had a question of how closely does CASR work with Excel and the Public Utilities Commission to influence residential solar policies? So I would love for you to take us off with that.
Yep, absolutely. And without sharing too much information, as a member of the solar co-op last year, I can tell you that it was more than a 10% discount versus that $3 a watt average that we see in Denver. So it was good to be a member. And in terms of policy and our advocacy and coordination work with Excel, we try to work really closely with all those entities. We're so reliant on Excel as our power provider, and they really are a leader in the country. You look at other investor-owned utilities around the nation, and Excel has some of the most ambitious goals, and has actually just laid out a plan at the Public Utilities Commission to reduce emissions by 85% by 2030, including a pretty big increase in investments in distributed energy resources like their rooftop solar programs. So we're always advocating for those ways of how do we make sure that it's really attractive for homeowners or renters or building owners to be putting solar on those rooftops, and do so in a way that is also going to provide the maximum grid benefits and helping to maintain a affordable and reliable electric system as we make this transition. I oversee what's called our Energy Future Collaboration between Denver and Excel Energy, where we meet on a monthly basis with a core team and then several working groups on various priorities pertaining to electricity decarbonization, buildings, transportation, our various resilience and reliability of the electric grid. And we report to our executives, every quarter, both in the city and at Excel, to show how we're doing on those goals. And then at the PUC is where everything actually gets decided. So, we set out our city objectives, Excel has their own. Oftentimes there's alignment. Oftentimes, there's slight disagreement as to, what the actual policy or program should look like. But the PUC is where all of that gets hammered out. And then it's about a 2 to 3 year cycle that the residential solar programs get updated, and that changes can be made, different incentive levels can be recommended, whether or not there's battery storage rebates is a big one that we expect to be coming up this year. So it was only in the past year that Excel offered a $1,250 rebate for residential battery systems. And we're really hoping to expand that in Excel's next plan that they'll be filing this October. So before the end of this month, we expect it to be put forward, but it'll be 6 to 8 months before any of that is actually decided upon, unfortunately. So there is, we're starting to see things going in the direction that we really want them to, and we're going to keep pushing hard to make sure that they get us there.
Thank you, Jonny. And I'm curious, when it comes to Energy Resource Center and grid alternatives, I know both working at the Public Utilities Commission and looking at policy tends to, there's a lot of work there. So I guess, how have you all been involved, especially in making sure that whether it's education or as appropriate lobbying to make sure that these programs are still making sure that the public is protected and getting the support they need?
Yeah, so we at Grid Alternatives, we are heavily involved in policy. We actually have a whole policy department because we understand that the work that I do is heavily dependent on people going to the PUC, which is the Public Utility Commissioner, to make sure that as we're moving forward in renewable energy, that it's in favor of the customer and not of the commissioner, or not of the commissioner, but of the utility company. And yeah, like Jonny said, anything that happens there in those rooms take 2 to 3 years to actually come into flourishing. So it's a long haul, like, you know, having the long-term view versus the short-term view. But yeah, we at Grid take that very seriously and have a whole team dedicated to lobbying and doing the rah-rahing on those in that area, so that the work that we do on the ground actually has support and works in favor of the customer and client.
We're very similar to Grid. The Weatherization Assistance Program was founded in the 1970s in the Carter administration. So it's a federal program. It's in every county in the country. And we, you know, working here with the state, the Colorado Energy Office, there are, you know, our executive leadership is in constant contact with the Energy Office and their leadership, continuously watching, you know, any movements in the new infrastructure bill. Our ears are to the ground at all times.
Thanks, Mike and Chelsea. And I would love to switch over to Stacey and kind of get your sense of your own experiences engaged in policy and what that's been like for you as both a solar co-op member and just as a mom and a resident. Like what does that look like for you and what have you done?
Sure. You know, I think that one of the things that became really clear, you know, through our involvement in the co-op and my involvement, you know, further as a volunteer for Sun, is that we are facing, you know, some issues that obviously take, you know, more than any individual, you know, going solar. And just so it became more and more apparent that policy, while it's not, you know, super exciting to everyone and it takes a really long time and can be super slow going, it's not as exciting as putting panels on your roof and turning them on and being like, okay, I did it. You know, so it's, but it's so important because those policies are really what make this accessible for everyone and really what makes, you know, things move forward in terms of it not being just individual people who are, you know, choosing to make this decision, but really truly equitable, available to everyone, and you know, utilized by our city and state, and of course nationwide as well. So, you know, I started to get involved a little bit through Sun at first, in terms of advocating for, you know, certain policies. You know, I went to a meeting with Corey Gardner, who didn't come, but his people came, and you know, have also just kept on top of the different legislation that is coming up, you know, in each legislative session. And I'm much more likely now as a solar customer to be looking out for these policies that not only benefit me as a solar user, but also benefit members of the community who have not yet gone solar, and increase their ability to do so. So it's just definitely more and more clear that, you know, without good policy, we really are hindered in the impact we can have.
Yeah, and I will share, without getting into too much detail, we certainly are monitoring what's coming down the pike, whether it's at the Public Utilities Commission and net metering policies. That is the ability for you to get credited for what you produce with your solar electricity. So that's something where we certainly will be present at the Public Utilities Commission and keep our members informed if there's opportunities to share your voice as solar customers, as well as to advocate for expanding solar equity. We are working on a statewide policy to do just that. We're looking at a program to make investments for solar and energy improvements at households much more easier and accessible. And it's called Pay As You Save, and it's something that we'll be talking more about in the future. But again, there is work between our organization and other organizations on the policy front, figuring out how do we expand this equitable transition and make sure that people have access to these resources, because we're talking about having homes be more comfortable, have them be safer with equipment upgrades, and ultimately keeping energy dollars in the pockets of residents and our businesses. So that's a big deal for us, and we're continuing to monitor what's happening federally. So as we look at this 26% tax credit, which will continue through 2022, but then it's going to be brought down to 2% in 23 and then phase out for residential. So we're advocating there to make sure that we can extend that. We'd love to see it increased, and we know that the Biden administration recently has announced expanding their initiatives to support solar across the country. So we're excited to see what happens. And again, part of our role is to make sure we're elevating the voices of those of you that are going solar here in Denver and working with our partners to build our impact. Any other thoughts on policy?
And Bryce, on that, related to access to financing options, that's just so important. The Colorado Energy Office has its Renew Home Energy Loan Program, which provides competitive financing terms for various energy-related home improvements, including solar. But those are offered through partnerships with private banking institutions. And so in some cases, they might still require credit checks or things like that exclude a certain percentage of the population, and particularly might even be some of those that we're trying to help with the solar equity rebate. So we're actually working with the folks who lead that program and the Colorado Clean Energy Fund to see if we can establish a financing options that are through Colorado's state-run Green Bank to have different requirements, things like, you don't need a private bank that's doing a credit check. They'll have different eligibility criteria so that more people can access the financing that they need to actually go solar. So I'm optimistic that the wheels are in motion to help get us there. But I think we're trying to be cognizant of all the different barriers that people may face and see if we can, come up with solutions to get there. And you certainly mentioned Pay As You Save. I think a great opportunity for us to keep talking about and trying to get something established in the coming years.
That's right. Thanks, Jonny. And I guess I just want to give one last opportunity. Is there any other incentives or subsidies per Meredith's question that are available or potentially coming down the pike that people should be aware of?
Really think the big one is the solar investment tax credit, that 26% credit that you'll get back on your taxes in that next tax year. And hopefully, we'll see an expansion from something going on at the federal level, but I tend to cover my eyes until the end because it's too stressful and things are likely to change. So focus on, what do we have control over right now and make sure we make the most of it while advocating for the things that we can meaningfully influence. And for me, at least, that's at the Public Utilities Commission. So hopefully we'll be creating some more opportunities in Colorado, and we'll wait and see on anything else from the federal level.
Yeah, Chelsea.
Bryce, sorry, there's a question in the chat about how community solar engaged with people with disabilities, specifically people with AC. For I'm getting this all types of messed up. I hope people can see that question in the chat. But to answer that question a little bit, with community solar and also with residential solar, any solar contractor that you work with has access to your past 12 months of data consumption usage. And from there, with community solar, which that is like a field full of solar panels that is divvied out to different homes all over wherever they work with. Typically with solar gardens or community solar, it is dependent on how many people subscribe and how much space or kilowatts space it is there to divvy out to homes. Now at residential solar, you have more options because we look at your, again, your 12 months of usage, and that will include the oxygen that you use, your AC consumption, all of that fun stuff. If you have a space heater that's running, it will contain all of that in there. And the solar company that you work with will be able to essentially build panels with that knowledge that fit those needs. So the short answer to that question is yes, those things are engaged with people who have disabilities when it comes to energy and AC usage. Just wanted to get that question answered because that's a really important one.
Yeah, and wondering if Dee Dee or others might be thinking about, the resiliency part of solar. Now, you're really only going to get that resiliency benefit when you have it at your home, hardwired into your house with a battery there as well. So in that, community solar model, and so if you have a disability and you're reliant on AC or oxygen or medical equipment or things like that, a community solar subscription could be a great way to help save money on what might be really high electricity usage every month. But that solar that's out in the field, there's a meter that's counting how much electricity is being produced, and then you get your fair share of that, credited to help offset your bill. So it's it'll help you save money on your bill while you supporting solar in the process. If you're really concerned about, I need to make sure that my oxygen machine is running 24/7, 365, no matter what, then that's where you can think about, let's try to configure that home solar arrangement with a battery that'll make sure that throughout any grid outage, you're going to have that backup power that you need and that system that can help you stay self-sufficient during that outage event.
Yeah, and I'll add, certainly medical equipment is a top priority, but depending where you live, could also be water pumping equipment. It could be data servers. Like there's a whole host of needs to keep electricity on no matter what. So certainly, I think with the incentive that we're seeing for the qualifying rebate, that's definitely a huge step with what Excel's offering as well. I think we're going to see more and more conversations around the concept of grid services and how this type of storage can keep individual households and commercial businesses online, and even then looking at the regional level.
Yeah, and kind of back to that policy question for a second. So Excel, they'll pay you money up front right now for getting a battery. We're working really hard to make sure that they keep paying you every year so that your battery is being used to help make sure that your power use and the way that your home connects with the grid is doing so in a way that's really beneficial to overall system operations, and you deserve to get paid for that. So that's where we're going to be pushing with a lot of advocacy and making sure that, the same way that your solar panel, you're getting bill savings every month, you should see that from your battery as well for the services that it can provide.
Great. And Harmony, I do see your question. So thank you for all the solar efforts. I have several issues getting solar. Ultimately, I still have solar. I live in a historic district and I would only be allowed to put 4 panels on my home due to a visual setback requirement. Has the co-op run into this issue? I'll first speak to the co-op, and then anyone that has this experience would love for you to share. But we've had people in historic districts, and basically Colorado law says that, while generally for homeowners associations, there's not a lot of restrictions that they can offer if it they can have a say, but they can't have a prohibitive amount of requirements that's going to increase the cost of the solar project based on Colorado law. Historic districts do have more power and more say of how it gets designed. And so typically we ask just to work with them up front. And I guess this is certainly something that we can work with you more directly on. But I guess maybe Jonny, do you have any thoughts about historic districts and working with them and going solar?
So I have talked to my colleagues over at Community Planning and Development who are responsible for the city zoning codes on things like that to really understand where are there opportunities for us to do more and be more flexible with the city's policies to be encouraging more solar. This was a tricky one because apparently Denver is already the most flexible city in the country when it comes to historic districts. We allow for solar so long as it's not on the front 1/3 of the roof, I believe is my understanding. But there's certainly potentially more opportunities for improvement. If there are any accessory structures towards the back of the home, like a garage or a pergola or things like that, I believe those could be loaded up with panels. So, historic districts are tricky because I understand that, there is a certain aesthetic that people want to maintain, but, the climate crisis is real and we need to be thinking about how can we, preserve that, historic appeal that the people in that neighborhood want while also ensuring that they can participate in the future of our clean energy system.
Great, thanks, Jonny. I know we're getting to be at the latter part of the evening, so I would love to offer everyone just a minute or two to wrap up, and then we'll ask the audience some last follow-up audience poll questions. So if everyone wouldn't mind just saying a word or two if you have anything to summarize, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure, I'll go. I just wanted to, encourage you all to look into some of these options that you've learned about tonight. You can follow up with Sun with the info session that's happening on Thursday, and also follow up with, the Energy Resource Center and Grid Alternatives for their offerings as well. The information is so helpful to have to help you make decisions now and sort of as you plan for the future. So I just encourage you to do that so that we can really get word out about all of these programs and help people take advantage of them. And then I guess my last plug would go with the, legislative potential is, we do have this infrastructure bill that's still being discussed, and, it can't hurt to make some phone calls, write some letters, because that is, a climate bill, and I can't speak to whether it has direct solar incentives, but I know that it will support the solar and renewable, energy industries as a whole, and would be a really important federal step. So if you have the time, take a little action and make your voice heard. Thank you.
I appreciate the time. Sorry, my internet connection was a little sketchy. I'll put our website in the chat. If anybody has any questions about weatherization, I'll put the email, the general inbox email is info@erc-co.org, which is our website. Please send any questions. We talked about weatherization specifically, or the Colorado Energy Office contract. We also are contractors for Energy Outreach Colorado, work closely with Grid Alternatives, Groundwork Denver, Mile High Youth Corps. We have a wide net of partners, and we appreciate them all. And so anyone that's interested in our specific weirdly named industry, weatherization, please check it out and reach out to us. I'd love to visit with anyone at any time.
And I'll just pile on, expressing my thanks to everyone for being here and everyone who watches the webinar recording. I really encourage you to join the co-op, learn about your options, learn more about the part that you can play in supporting our clean energy transition and hopefully saving yourself some money and increasing the resilience of your home in the process. So, thank you.
Yeah, I would love to just say one, thank you for your time today, for coming out and hearing us talk about this awesome program that the City of Denver and Sun has going on. And I would just highly encourage anyone who has more questions or just wants to know of what exactly is available to them to check out D1, which is Denver Office of Nonprofit Engagement, but also if you contact either Grid, I can speak for Grid for sure, but I'm pretty sure if you reach out to ERC or Sun or Grid Alternatives with questions, we will answer, because we want to help you navigate the complexities of solar and also see what other benefits and resources are out there for you to take advantage of. So please do so. And yeah, again, thank you for your time tonight.
Great. A huge thank you to all of our panelists and Councilman Clark, as well as Grace Rink with the CASR office. And to wrap us up for tonight, I'd love to do just one last quick audience poll of everybody. So don't hop off just yet. So if you wouldn't mind answering a couple more questions. So after hearing today's panel, what aspect related to rooftop solar interests you most now? Okay, so it looks like about 60% climate and environmental benefits, and then cost savings and resiliency tied, and then another idea in the chat. So thank you. It seems like similar numbers from earlier, which is great. And then our next question is, are you or someone you know interested in joining the Denver Solar Co-op? Great. I know we didn't get a chance to talk too much about the co-op tonight. So about 75% of you say you'd like to learn more first. So again, making a plug for this Thursday, if you can make it at 6 o'clock, we will be having a solar information session where we can dig more into the technical aspects of solar, the solar co-op process, as well as financing options for you. So we'll have that information available. We'll record that as a webinar and put that on our website. We also will have a couple other presentations later in the month going into November. So stay tuned for that. And then lastly, what topics would you be interested in learning more about for future webinars or through materials? And this is an important one that we want to hear from you, because we know there's a lot of topics that we covered tonight. And getting this feedback allows us to figure out what we're going to do next in terms of these types of educational panels and outreach into the community. Okay, great. It looks like certainly the Denver Solar Co-op process. Financial consideration options are the top two at 90% for the Denver Solar Co-op, and then the equity rebate pilot, and then continuing with the solar is real and the climate goals and workforce development. So again, thank you all for that feedback. And so that's those are the results there. And so just to wrap up, so again, my name is Bryce Carter. I'm the Colorado Program Director of Solar United Neighbors, and we're here as a resource, as well as everyone else on this call. To reach us, you can email us at co-team@solarunitedneighbors, solarunitedneighbors.org. Right now, our member sign-up deadline for the Solar Co-op is November 20th. It's completely free to join, and there's no obligation to go solar. And we already have 50 members, so we're going to be releasing the request for proposal for installers probably tomorrow, actually. And we will be working to start forming our selection committee in the next couple of weeks. So if you're interested in being part of that, join now if you haven't already, and you'll be able to join up with that committee. Otherwise, we do have these upcoming information sessions, as I mentioned. So next one's going to be this Thursday at October 7th at 6 p.m. The next one will be Wednesday, November 10th at 6 p.m. And then we'll have another one Friday at noon on November 12th. And you can access the RSVPs for these events at solarunitedneighbors.org/Denver/events. And so with that, I just want to thank everybody for your time tonight, and really appreciate again all of our guests. And yeah, we look forward to being in touch and continuing to make a difference as we pursue a more sunny future for all of us through solar, through weatherization, and all sorts of awesome equity, energy equity programs. So again, my appreciation to the attendees and the panelists, and I hope everyone has a wonderful night tonight.